Hey folks, and welcome to the That's Rally podcast. I'm Mark Piatkowski, and I'll be talking in this series to many influential figures in North America Rally and beyond. I'm very excited to have my very first guest in this podcast, Tim O'Neill. I met him at his shop in New Hampshire, and we chatted about the past, present, and future of rallying throughout his many decades in the sport. There are many, many golden nuggets in this conversation. I hope you enjoy. All right, Tim, thank you very much for hopping on the show. You're my first podcast guest. That's a good honor.
It's an honor.
And it's actually an honor for you to be on the show. I'm very excited to chat with you because I think you have a lot of insight to the world of rallying. So I think this is going to be hopefully a very, very fruitful chat. Do you remember the first time that you met me? You may not.
I remember around that time I was very busy and stressed out with paperwork. So
you were.
I do remember popping in and out, but
so it was the fall of 2008. I was my dad actually bought me the best high school graduation present ever. It was a 4-day school at Tim O'Neill. And you were in and out a little bit. I think Chris Duplessis was my main instructor. But there was one session where we actually went into the workshop, and you showed the everyone how this is where we build cars, and this is how the importance of a skid plate and stuff like that. And then at the end of the session, when you asked, does anybody have any questions? I raised my hand and I was like, "What the hell is a ca?"
It's an automobile.
I don't think you liked me back then, but that was the first time. And then I'm also going to say the second time that we met, it was on the side of Rally New York. It was a tarmac Rally New York 2009, and this is right before the Zero car. You had a red Audi 4000 Quattro, and you came screaming down the stage, and then you parked it right where I was. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we were talking a little bit, and you said, "You know why he's a keeper?" And we were both like, "Why?" He goes, "Because you know where he's going to be at Friday night, every Friday night." And
you're addicted to cars.
I'm addicted to cars.
You know trouble.
It's a crazy thing. I have a little bit of an intro here that I wrote up, and let me know if this is accurate. I have Tim O'Neill is a 5-time U.S. and North America Rally champion. You were a factory driver for Volkswagen and Mitsubishi. You obviously started the Tim O'Neill Rally School. You've trained thousands and thousands of people. I'm assuming many of which have become champions in rally. You were the co-founder of ARA. And what I think is probably the reason why I admire you a lot is because you're still rallying. You started in the 80s. You've been rallying on and off ever since. Why? Why do you think you keep continuing it?
Oh, it's definitely, I'm a challenge junkie, and it's the most difficult thing I've ever tried. So I'm still learning every day. So I think I'm the kind of guy, like a lot of us, that if it was easy, I probably wouldn't do it. I'd give up. It's not that challenging. I won't do it. Because
it's so often you see people that come and go. Right, and high profile people that come in, win a championship, and they're like, I don't necessarily want to do this, but you keep doing it, and I admire you for that.
Well, that's the long game. That's where, like I said, I think most people in this sport like a challenge, and I've had friends that I want to bring to the rally, and then I say, well, where are we going to stay for a hotel? I'm like, I'm not sure. You don't know we're going to stay? I'm like, well, no, we're going to probably go to Ohio somewhere and find a place there. They just couldn't deal with the uncertainty and the difficult conditions, and like, oh, you don't have a hoist? It's like you're going to crawl into the car in the mud and work on it? Like, yeah, that's how that our type of people would just love the idea of crawling under a car in the mud and changing a transmission.
So do you think rally people are different from other types of motorsport people?
For certain, yes.
I agree.
That's what I think the whole hook is. And for me, I had been racing stock cars early on, and I found out about rallying, and it was instantly a challenge that I wanted to do. And I went to the first rally, and I saw Buffum and Millen coming down the road, and they were doing like 100 miles an hour into this tight corner. I said, "There's no way they're going to make that corner." And they made the corner, and the next guy, no way he's going to, no way. And after a while, I'm like, okay, well, there's something here. I need to learn a lot.
So let's start from the beginning, because I kind of want to go through your career, because I think it's quite fascinating. Like, why rally? What year was it? Kind of take me through the beginning of it. How did you get acclimated into the sport? What was your introduction?
Well, I think first, when I was in this military, before I even went in, we used to race around on dirt roads for the entertainment. That was kind of what you did in an area like this. There's nothing else to do but go four-wheeling and rip around.
So just for context for people, we're here in New Hampshire at your shop. Sure, they can probably see in the background if they're
Northern New Hampshire.
Northern New Hampshire. You grew up here?
Yes. Technically, I haven't grown up, but yes. I got old here, yes.
Okay.
And so after I got out of the military, friends of mine were racing stock cars, and I thought working on stock cars was kind of like working on airplanes. It was complicated and technical, and I liked that. And as a mechanic by trade, I wanted to be involved in racing because of that. And then I was working at dealerships, and I liked Triumph Spitfires. I was a foreign car mechanic, so I liked Spitfires. And then I bought a Road and Track magazine. I still have upstairs, or one that I bought afterwards, and it had a Triumph TR8 rally car and a street car and a road racing car, and I'm like, what is a rally car? I see it going through a mud puddle at 80 with John Buffum driving, and I just immediately like, that's what I want to do. I wasn't sure any of it, and one of the in the garage there was the floor sweeper guy, an old guy, and he goes, "Oh, my son works on that car." And he told me where Buffum's shop was, and I jumped into my old cop car that I used to drive around and went to Burlington and met John Buffum and found out about rallying, and I have been just totally hooked ever since.
Would you say that John is probably one of the influential figures that got you into the sport?
For sure, yeah. I wouldn't say he helped me at all, but by talking to him that first time and explaining what it was and seeing what he had done, for certain, he's the brightest of all the rally drivers in the U.S. Yeah. I think he's got the most talent, experience, and he has, whether he wanted to or not, he has helped us all a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. He's about as old school rallying as you can certainly get.
Yes.
I want to kind of go through your career. I think we have a few segments that I want to talk about, but I want to talk about your rallying career. I have a few photos here that I printed out. But I want to start from the beginning.
Fits and starts. I've started and stopped like 4 times.
Oh, I think we all have.
Yeah.
But like I said, you still rally to this day, and I think I really admire that. But I want to start from the beginning. So at least here in my notes, I have 1986 Saab 99. Is that where it started?
Mostly, yes. Before that, it was the dark ages. Before that, I had a Capri rear-wheel drive, and I put it together, caged it, and I practiced a lot, and then I ruined it before the first rally. So I didn't ever rally the race app. So I learned early on that from Buffum and from Sandy Liversidge and many others that you needed to master front-wheel drive if you was ever to go four-wheel drive, because four-wheel drive was still when people weren't certain it was going to be the best, but Buffum was winning at the time, so we were pretty convinced that was the future. So I had to master front-wheel drive, which I hated, by the way. Mm-hmm. So it was, I started building the Saab 99s after I ruined the Capri.
Because the Capri was rear-wheel drive.
Yes.
And then you decided to switch to front-wheel drive because of the advice that you've gotten.
Yes. And so I moved back, long stories, but I used to live in a garage and work on cars for free, and whatever I could do to learn about rally, I was just so into it. And I quit my job and moved to Burlington and lived in a garage. This is a sick passion.
How old were you back then?
Young.
Okay.
Younger. I would guess somewhere around 26.
Okay.
So I went and built the first couple of Saabs. Didn't work out so well. I didn't bother
Why?
putting a cage in them.
Okay.
Because I wasn't going to make it very far. So I learned the old way, which is, go around the corner as fast as you could go, and then what are you going to learn? Don't let off the gas. Yeah. So you had to like rebuild the car once, and then the next time you go around the same corner and do the same thing, but you made it a little further around the corner and realized, yeah, I think I did let off the gas. So maybe by the third time you rebuilt the car, you learned to stay on the gas. So, okay, the next problem. So this is kind of how it went for quite a while. And finally, I found a good Saab body, and then I put a cage in that. And by that time, I started figuring out how to stay on the road.
And this was the 1986
Yes.
Saab 99.
Yes.
So
well, in '86, it was actually a really ancient '99. It was like a 1970 or '69 body shell. It was light, the lightest of the 99s.
Well, I guess what I meant by that is at least on paper here, your first rally was 1986.
Yes.
Do you remember what event that was?
I should say it was Coolidge Forest, or I think it was the Coolidge Forest. It might have been 85 or 84. The Vermont rally.
Yeah, at least here it says 86. Do you remember how that went for you? And I ask that because I think everyone's first rally experience is so influential. Like if you have a bad first rally, that just puts a bad taste in your mouth. It clearly did not put a bad taste in your mouth.
Well, because I like challenge, so right. I found it. I think certainly that's why I started the school, is because I met a lot of people that would do one or two rallies and give up and go away. It was quite common. And I felt bad if they learned a little bit about what they could stay on the road long enough and don't break their car, then they get the hook. Once you finish a rally, you're in.
Yep.
So I think I can't remember exactly, but right around that time, the regional rally I had some 16-year-old kid whose mother said it was okay and put him in the car. He had no idea what was going on, and I would go flat out. No spares, no nothing. We weren't gonna be changing any tires, right? When we go off, it's epic, So I think I did pretty well on that one. And then
you finished.
Okay. And then I don't remember how I finished. I probably did well. And then I took a while because I had to get into business, because you really can't do this with just working 9 to 5. You really need to be able to have some sort of business, some little second side gig or side hustle that you can do. And so fixing cars on the side was good. I would fix cars and sell them and make money that way. But I finally got my garage in Franconia that I now could actually make real money with a proper garage. So that was right around that time. So I had to stop for a little while just to get business sorted out. And then it was funny because I was kind of stuck racing stock cars at the same time and rally cars and trying to start a business, and it was very frustrating. And then I went and these guys came to the gas station. It was a gas station, and these two English guys with like old coveralls, all dirty coveralls, and they said, as soon as they spoke, I'm like, "You guys know about rally?" Oh, they were so in. And like, "You got a rally car out back?" And they just like, it was so exciting. So finally I found a couple guys that were willing to work on the car, and then we fixed it up and we went to Canada. And
in the Saab.
Yeah, and I never went to Canada. And it was funny because I didn't have a co-driver, and that was kind of slowing me down. I thought I needed to have a co-driver. And they're like, "Nah, let's just get the car going. We'll show up. We'll find somebody there." And we did. And I was on the hoist, and this guy came up and looked at my car, and I had all new brakes and all new everything. It was mint, And he goes, "My wife will ride with you." I'm like, "Great."
His famous last words.
Right. Okay. Your wife, not you, your wife. All right. That's fine. Whatever. I was desperate. Lynn Caron, she was the Canadian national champion. She rolls in. She goes, "I co-drive for you." My English not so good, but that's okay. We got Dwa and Gosh. We'll figure out left and right later. And so it was a real bizarre experience, because as soon as we get started, well, she had pace notes. I never knew anything about pace notes. She goes, you do what I tell you.
Legal pace notes, or how did that work?
Oh, they didn't have such a thing back then. So all the Canadians did. That's how they're so fast. This is long before we knew.
Yeah.
So my enlightenment came when Lynn Caron is co-driving for me in the Saab 99, and she's not allowing me to slow down anywhere. And I'm going way faster than I've ever gone in my life. And she's reading the notes, and it's mostly English. And I just eventually I ruined my engine because I just wound it so hard, beating it. Those old engines didn't like to be revved up. But it gave me an impression like, okay, now I know how they do it, or now I know what direction we got to go in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the notes, but it was just the attitude of like, yeah, I thought I was pretty fast, and I was pretty wild too, but the precision that she had with the notes and this is what you got to do and never do this and always do that, it gave me a little bit of understanding of what kind of discipline it required.
I think she was probably a good teacher for you back then in your early days.
Oh yes, for sure. You know, but it like the good co-drivers, you find that when there's a crest and they tell you to go flat and you let off the gas a little bit, they get irritated. They don't like that. I did not tell you to slow down. I did not tell you to let off the gas or hit the brake at all. So that was my first impression of that.
So do you think for somebody who's starting out rallying, how important is having somebody who has experience in the right seat?
Vital. You don't want two rookies. I mean, you can, and it's kind of fun for adventure purposes. But to reach success, you won't. I mean, you can learn together, and it'll take you a very long time because you're both making mistakes, and stupid ones, usually, because you just don't know. I always recommend everybody to try to get an experienced co-driver. If you're a new driver, have a used car that's been sorted.
Yep.
Get a co-driver that knows what they're doing. That's your best chance for success. But what really good co-driver is going to get in with a rookie?
I think that's the common dilemma.
It is.
That people have.
It is. And if they don't know, like this guy, the guy I was telling you about in Canada, he looked at my car and he could tell the way it was prepared that I wasn't just an idiot. You know, the bolts weren't falling out and it wasn't half done. It was like a professional mechanic put this car together with a lot of thought. So most of the good co-drivers will look at the vehicle preparation, and you have a Ferrari engine in your Subaru, that's great. But if you get bolts falling off and wheels falling off, that's not so good.
Sorry, Sam.
Yeah. And Sam's a past customer too, but we don't talk about that. The biggest problem that I see with people is they'll prepare their car, but they don't make it look good. You could take a spray can and a little duct tape or masking tape, and you can make your car look pretty good for probably about a $50 bill would probably be all it would take. A lot of labor, but they don't. I'm not saying anything. The top guys, all the cars look pretty good.
Yeah.
But you're judged on your appearance in this world, right?
I think so many people in America take that for granted because in Europe it's all about like clean footwells and no dents and this. And then I feel like some competitors, some teams here feel like the appearance is not high on their priority list.
Right. And that's what other people think of everything in your operation that way. I always had a theory that the reason they did that is they wanted to be able to say, when the car goes fast, they want to be able to say, it's not the car, it's me. See, the car's a piece of crap. See, look at it. No, it's me, the hero driver, that's making it so fast. And it's like, that's just the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
You watch a lot of the drift guys, they got no door panels. It's like, what is taking the door panels off going to help you with the vehicle? It's not a aesthetically pleasing, no.
Yeah, it's not a professional look at all. So, I want to go back. So now we have your Saab days, and then you move on to a Volkswagen. How did that transition happen? You did well in the Saab. I'm assuming you got some accolades from that.
I did. I think I won the Rookie of the Year in Canada. No, I can't remember here. I don't even remember. But yeah, I did pretty well regionally in the Saab. And then I started getting better co-drivers. And I was now buying parts and pieces that were better, like tires and stuff I would buy from the Volkswagen team in Burlington.
There was a Volkswagen team.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Buffum's mechanic for many years, James Saltolano Salty, he broke off from Buffum and ran the Volkswagen program right around that same time. So 86 was you could first get a Golf. So he had the 8-valve Golf and then later the 16-valve Golf. So when I was buying parts and pieces, I would talk to him and help him and whatever. We got along pretty good because we're both mechanics. And so I had a theory that, exactly. I had a theory, that's the production car.
Okay.
That was 88. So I thought, well, maybe Volkswagen would eventually want a good driver that had some experience already with a Volkswagen. And then when the guy retires, Jean-Paul Perouse was the number one driver at the time with Martin as the co-driver.
A factory team.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the 16-valve Group A car, I thought, would eventually be available. So I needed to get my hands on that old 8-valve car. So I made a deal with Salty, and so I went and what I do? I rented it for Tall Pines Rally. Because they were doing the championship, and they were needing points, and they needed to know that somebody else was there as another car, and kind of
Support.
little support and filler maybe. So I'm like, sure, yeah, I've rented. I don't remember how much I had to pay him, but it wasn't that much, and I told him I'd fix it if I wrecked it, and he trusted me. So we showed up, and I had the ability to run Hakkapeliitas. I knew Tall Pines was going to be slippery. I had run it once, and I knew the Canadians. I knew the Ontario people, so they're like, bring every tire you got. It's going to snow.
Slippery.
It might snow.
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's all the things that we know. So, but the factory team had to stick with the Pirellis, and Pirelli didn't have a particularly brilliant snow tire. So when the race started, it started snowing and whatever, and it just so happened that I was beating the factory team. So, and actually,
In this rental.
yes,
Okay.
and a slower car, but it had better power, better torque because it was an 8-valve. 16-valve was real tweaky at the top end, so it wasn't particularly easy to drive either. And then you didn't have the right snow tires, so it wasn't fair. But hey, I was the privateer; I could run whatever I wanted.
Right.
Actually, the funny story, I needed those tires, so my girlfriend had 4 brand new Hakkas on her Saab, so I jacked it up, took the tires, and left it on jack stands when I went to the rally. It wasn't nice. Not a happy ending story.
What was her reaction to that?
She wasn't happy at
she
all,
wasn't.
no.
Probably not.
But so anyway, so I was doing well in the rally, and then Martin said, this is kind of embarrassing and inconvenient. You're going to have to slow down because you're beating
the
us. Yeah.
factory people.
So I'm like, and I knew already that if you didn't follow team orders, you were going to be unemployed soon, and you won't have a job, ever have a chance again. So it probably was in the back of my head when I was driving, and I rolled it in a big way, in a big yard sale. And then I did learn my lesson there too. Also afterwards was, if you drive through your records, you're going the wrong way. So that was a lesson. My co-driver, a good co-driver, said, turn around. Because after I landed back on my wheels, I started going the wrong way. So he knew that driving through the wreckage was a bad idea. So I learned that.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. So anyway, so I finally get to the end of the rally, and I finished 4th or something like that, and they finished whatever they had to do, finished 2nd, and they won the championship. And I figured I was done. I was not going to, that was my big chance. I blew it.
Yeah.
And so, but I couldn't reach Salty, the guy that owned the car, and he was at a hunting camp out near here. So I'm sitting in my office going, well, I'm done.
You're waiting for the call.
Yeah. And so he comes in the office. And the car's out back, looks like a raisin, right? It is. I'm like, oh, man. I'm trying to chase him down. He's like running out back. He wants to see the car, and he's all excited. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, he talked to the Volkswagen guy, and he said he'd pay for, he'd send me all the new parts if I didn't mind just putting the labor in. And I don't have to buy the car if I don't want. It was just like a super happy ending, but I was freaking out for quite a while thinking that was it. And I eventually, we fixed the car, and I eventually bought the car and had quite a bit of success with that regionally and some national stuff. I think I was the East Coast regional champion and went to the runoffs out west. So that was the first time I went out west.
So this was 88, 89?
88.
88, yeah. So does this mean in 88 you were part of the official Volkswagen team?
Yes. But I can't remember all the dates. So
Okay.
somewhere along the way, I went right around 88, 87 or 88. I went and it did happen where the number one driver did retire. And Martin, it was quite a controversy about who was going to drive next. And Salty wanted me to drive, and nobody ever heard of me. And he's like, I like him. Let's do it. And a lot of the top guys, the elites, would be like calling the Volkswagen Motorsport guy, and
Pick me, pick me.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
like, it's not my call. The guy that owns the contract, the mechanic, Salty, he decides who. So that was a big break for me. I mean, I put myself in that position. I did a lot of good things to get there,
Yeah.
and I made the right decisions, and I took team orders and all this other stuff. But fact is, he liked me, and he knew that I would help work on the car. I wouldn't, if it didn't work, I would try to fix it. I wouldn't complain. I would get it to the service area with duct tape and zip ties, and didn't break it. It didn't run it out of oil, or whatever. So being a mechanic, I think, made a big difference there.
Yeah, I agree. I have another photo.
Those are cheesy shots. Yeah, we have some photos of staged photos. This was, I don't know what year it was. It was
That was clearly in your Volkswagen.
it was
days, so-
clearly in the 80s, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been 89, or that might have been Rally Golf time. That might have been 90. Yeah, those are cheesy shots.
Not a great photo, but
This one was I can't see the roof. This was a Group A 16 valve, probably. Could have been the 8 valve car. I can't tell exactly. Group A, I'm sure. So these are the days you're talking about. That one of my bigger successes was not just the 8 valve, and I mean the 16 valve Group A car, but what happened was after '88, I think they finally said, Volkswagen said, we're not going to continue on with the Group A program. And Salty said, well, and they said, well, the option is you can run the production car. And Salty said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm into high speed
compete.
stuff, and he'd been doing it for a while, and he needed a break anyway. And so I think there was an opportunity for me to take the contract over. So Team O'Neill Motorsports took over the production car, and that for sure was in '89.
so how does that work? Explain to the audience, where I'm assuming the parts you were getting from Volkswagen.
Well, it works many different ways. This particular way happened where in '89, they had already built the production car. They got it off the assembly line at Westmoreland, and they welded it and put it back on the assembly line, and it became a seam welded car from the factory.
Yeah.
And they had 2 of them, 3 of them, and then one of them went to Guy Light, and then one of them went to Salty, and another one went to Salty, and somebody ruined it, another driver. And so I got basically a brand new car and an unlimited supply of parts. Along with that came Bosch sponsor, and they would give me whatever I needed, spark plugs and filters and distributors and whatever. Recaro give me seats, so you have brand new seats in the car, seats in the van, whatever you needed. Pirelli gave me tires. There was a little controversy with the tires, but I was supposed to get tires. Valvoline, there was oil, and I think the Valvoline money was part of the money we got. You get a check for so much money to run the year. And that paid for hotels and gas and whatnot.
So do you think with all these partnerships, you were making money?
No,
or you were
never made money
just
rallying.
cutting it almost at zero?
Remember, I had a garage business that was making money, and that's where all the labor costs went. I had to pay for all the labor costs, your trucks and trailers and everything. I think the money that I got barely paid for like the gas in the hotel rooms.
I see.
The running costs, and that's really all I look at now. If I could get the running costs paid, my car, I'll spend the money on that, and when I'm done, I'll still have the car. But it's the running costs that are out the window.
So even back then, as a factory Volkswagen team, you still put your own money into it.
For sure. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. There were people that made money at it, but generally, what I think the manufacturers have discovered is don't write checks to open checks, because the teams will find, oh, well, we couldn't make it. The sun got in our eyes, or there's always some excuse. It's like you're better off making them starve a little. Work it. Okay, yeah, maybe if you do all this stuff for us and you don't fail, maybe there's a little something at the end for you.
Dangle the carrot.
Right. They've realized you got to partner with somebody that has money, it has resources. You can't just take, you know, a young guy with nothing and give him money. It doesn't seem to work out.
Yeah. So that is 89. And then I have this famous photo. This photo.
You're skipping.
Okay.
We didn't talk about the famous handsome thing.
Go for it.
So in '89, the first rally in the production car was the rally in Georgia, and that was
Rally in Georgia?
Yeah, it was a regional. Well, no, it was a national rally. It was a regional. The year before, I did it with Martin, and actually, Salty sent Martin with me down there to see how good I was. And his report was Martin was like, he's no good at night. He doesn't know how to do his lights or any of that.
By Martin, this is Martin Headland.
Yes.
Okay.
So Martin's like, but he seems to be pretty good, and when he gets out of control, he can save it, and he doesn't beat the car, and he's kind of friendly, and he doesn't stink, or whatever he told him. So that was when that had in the back of Salty's head when he nominated me. He already knew what Martin's recommendation was, and then I knew for years Martin was the one I needed in the car because I had pretty decent co-drivers, but Martin was next level stuff.
Why? What made him good compared to the others that you had?
He was raised the old way, doing tulip maps in England, using a potty scope, doing 80 miles an hour on roads. It was just old school. So,
but the European influence,
Yeah.
I think, was an
Yeah.
allure to you.
yeah. He's like the adventurer. He's an aviation engineer. He's an adventure boy. He's done it all. He's the right guy for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I wanted Martin in there, so I had the choice, and of course I wanted Martin. That was the whole point. Is get Martin and the car. And so anyway, the next year it was a national in Georgia, and then they had a rally, and then they had a monsoon rainstorm. It was like awful. The National Guard was called out, and roads were flooded, and roads were blocked, and
Not typical for Georgia.
no, but it was a rally going on at the same time, but nobody really told us that there was a national emergency going, but we found it just a little difficult to drive.
Yeah.
And somebody broke a timing belt, and somebody else broke their wipers, and somebody else, Rod Millen crashed his car, and all this stuff happened. And so I'm just going flat out, and we won overall in a production car.
Wow.
I didn't know it. Back to the hotel room, Martin's like, there's somebody at the door, and I think I know why. Because we didn't know all the scores. It wasn't that easy back then,
So you finished the rally without knowing
Right.
that you won.
One overall, yeah. And I don't know, it hasn't been done very many other times with a production-based car.
I at least not during my time. I don't think so.
Right. I think Buffum won in Canada with a Rabbit overall. But I don't know what it was for production. I don't know if it was production or not. But and I've won with production GT, Group N, Group A. I've won with all the production-based cars. That's what I feel. My most of my victories have been in production-based cars, and it's mostly because I never had the money to run open class.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's a lot of effort, and we've talked a lot about the preparation it takes to run at that pointy end of the spear.
Yeah.
But and most of my championships are production based, or Group N or Group A, and that's kind of why my hobby is these old cars, because that was my day,
Yeah, I think everyone that rallies will eventually come back to the cars that when they grew up were kind of in the heyday. I can relate the same as well. But let's go back to that Georgia rally. You get a knock on the door.
Well, the ESPN cameraman, I was like frozen. I never talked on the camera. I never seen it. I was a hick boy from Whitefield. I just kept driving faster and faster until I had success. But the pieces had to be there. The car, the co-driver, everything had to be right.
Would you say that the rally in Georgia is the one that kind of solidified everything? Do you think it got maybe a bit easier for you to find sponsorship?
I think I might have felt a little more comfortable in my own skin. Because I still probably felt it was a little unreal.
It's more validating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the winning overall wasn't planned, wasn't expected. And then I didn't think I could do it again.
Yeah.
But then I found my pace. And also Martin, and during this time, I'd been with Martin and Salty for a while, and they used to help me find my pace by realizing that I would drive really, really, really fast only when I needed to. So normally I would putt along, and I do okay, but The ultra speed like you have now is really just everything has to be just right, and you find that zone in your head where you just don't think and you just drive on instinct. And you have to have a little bit of red meat,
Red mist.
Well, not red mist, but you gotta like to eat raw red meat.
What
A
do you
little
mean?
bit of an animal,
Okay.
and be very aggressive is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I find that they would do things like the alternator wire would all of a sudden come off, and then the light would be on. It's like, oh no, I got to go really fast now. And then Martin used to do the trick of like,
So your team would play these tricks on you
Yeah.
to make you push.
yeah. And I remember he would like go, oh man, I'm so sorry, Tim. I just checked in. I added 26 and 14. Oh man. Oh, we are now like 37th overall. I am so sorry. Don't worry, Martin. I'll fix this. So then I drive like a total idiot, wear out everything on the car.
Yeah.
Then eventually he's like, okay, we're 4th overall. That's good now.
But he knew.
He
He knew
knew.
what he was doing.
And then it didn't take too long before I realized how to do it on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did the famous Golf synchro come into play? Because if you ask anybody, this is actually quite a popular photo on like Volkswagen forums.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Now
Actually, folks that don't even really like rally, this
And that
photo
was
is
the
quite
that was
popular.
the I almost destroyed the car right there.
Well, that's the long straightaway.
Yeah, but it come, the sideways over a crest, and it's like a 4,000-foot drop off there
Yeah.
or whatever. I didn't expect to do that. The guy that took that picture said, "That's a really cool picture." And when I saw it, I went, ah. It was like they realized that was the moment in my life I thought it was all over.
Yeah.
And he thought, "Oh, that's a cool picture." I'm like, "Yeah." So the production car I'd won and was running in the top 5, top 3 overall. I was like winning the. Well, at that point, I was leading the championship in a production car.
Yeah, incredible.
But then I had other problems. But I think I slowly sunk down a second in the championship, and it was like I was still second overall in the championship till late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
It was an incredible season with a production car. So that's where I think most of my claim to fame was in '89.
So do you think after that, it kind of raised the eyebrows of people in Volkswagen and
Before the plane crash in Lockerbie, Scotland, yes, there was a plan.
talk about that?
Well, there was a plan in '89 or '90. I can't remember exactly the date, but the Lockerbie, Scotland crash was Pan Am had a bomb go off inside, and exploded, and then on there was James Fuller and Eaton, and I think a number of other VW executives that come back from Germany with the motorsport plan, and it involved increasing the motorsport footprint by a lot in the U.S. I think they were going to do a lot with the Rally Golf in Europe. All those people were senior executives that got replaced by mid-level managers. And the mid-level managers were younger, and they liked pedal bikes and Farfignugan campaign. They spent $22 million on driving pleasure.
They didn't see the value in not only motorsport but rallying.
No. At that time, Volkswagen was probably had the biggest number of motorsport enthusiasts of any manufacturer. Everybody was jacked up on the Golf.
Yeah.
It was incredible, and they walked away from all of it pretty much. They just the new guys said, "Nah, we're not into it." So they'd already had shipped over the Rally Golfs by that point. The plan was already to give me all the motorsport drivetrain and to dominate and beat the Quattros. And
You think that was possible?
yes, the
You ever
Mazdas.
look back and be like, well, what if?
Well, all the time. That's why I bought my car back. But there's a long story, but there was a lot of people that did not want me to get those parts, and that made sure I didn't, actually. But the plane crash really messed it up, and that would have. So we had 5 red ones, 2 sunroof and 3 no sunroofs, and I took the no sunroof, and then I took the one I have here, the sunroof one, and I stripped that for parts and used the intercooler and all the pieces because there was no spares.
The one that's outside.
Yes. I stripped that down and
Yeah.
made it and used the parts that I needed for spares. And that's why I got that car, because it had a sunroof and I didn't want to use it for a rally car.
No.
So I used it for parts. That's the only reason that survived.
Right.
And So the Volkswagen Motorsport guy goes, well, you can take the car, but we don't have much of a budget, and I don't think this is going the right direction. So I wanted to anyway. I had my heart set on it.
Yep.
We did Pikes Peak. There was another issue with Pikes Peak. I had a choice in that year to run the Rally Golf in stock Rally Golf form or the two-wheel drive supercharged road racing car Bill Pate had. So I chose the non-Rally Golf because if you're going to have the same engine, you might as well have a lighter front-wheel drive car.
Right.
So I went up Pikes Peak. Guy Light took this car. Must be before I stripped it. Yeah, Guy Light took this car and put a cage in it, and I drove a road racing car with a G60 in it, and I broke the transmission and never finished, and he ended up winning with that car. So that exact car that you see out back was the Pikes Peak winning car in '89, I think.
Incredible.
So yeah, so then after that, I got the car after the Pikes Peak. Then we went Rally Golf, and I was supposed to get the pieces and parts from Hanover, which is where Germany, the motorsport shop is. But I think they subbed out those parts. They went to a couple different companies, made this proper diffs and proper titanium drive shafts and axles and what the stuff that doesn't break. And I got Volkswagen helped me with the engine. They got Lehman is the engine builder that builds these really mean engines. And so I had the really powerful engine and superchargers, and I had all the best ECUs and everything, but I couldn't get the proper drivetrain. So I continued to try to run the stock drivetrain with upgrades, and I modified it and made one part stronger and it broke something else.
We all know
and
how
fix
that ends,
and break something else and keep breaking things. And so eventually, at 91, I ran it, and then I just finally, eventually, mid-91, I gave up on the Rally Golf.
Before we move on to your Mitsubishi days, I have here 1990 Rally Finland.
Oh, yeah.
What was going on there?
I have some pictures of that, too, both
Okay.
before, during, and after the major crashes.
So why? Why did you enter? What possessed you to do that event?
Well,
Because that's a major step,
I had an aspiration to be some sort of world champion guy.
as we all do.
Yeah. And I needed a reality check. And a friend of mine, a guy that helped organize the first Mount Washington, he took a liking to me, thought I was good. He decided I was the one. And he said, I'll help you. And I have all these guys, and he had all these contacts in Finland. And I said, yeah, but I got to deal with Volkswagen, so it's got to be a Rally Golf. And there weren't many out there. And he found the guy, DR Tuning, Dr. Lionel Don't, this guy in Belgium that had a Group N Rally Golf. And
Group N, so
production, totally
Production,
stock.
yeah.
Not like ridiculous engines that blow up drivetrains.
right.
So, and then there was Tamo Taco and Vesako Virma, and all three of us had a production-based Rally Golf in 1990. And then he also knew a bunch of the people there that he found a co-driver, Jackie Hankinen, who ended up being a pretty famous co-driver, and a very good driving coach. And so Jackie was willing to be my co-driver because he wanted to practice his English. And he didn't have a lot of English, but Jackie was he was really good. So I had Michelin was my sponsor then. And they gave me tires, so they sent over, hundreds of tires. I don't know how many I needed. Because it was a week long. It was 52 stages in those days. It was a week of recce and a week of the rally.
So I'm assuming you were not used to that, the
No.
week-long recce.
Well, yeah. I mean, the only notes we'd done is the ones that the
Right.
co-drivers would pull out of their driving suits.
You were given them to
Yes. And we did technically do a couple practice runs when we made our own notes. So I wasn't totally new, but mostly.
you. Yeah.
The biggest thing that was my surprise is the roads are so wide. I wasn't used to having proper racing lines, right? I raced stock cars. I knew about lines, but I never really committed the way the Finns did it.
Yeah.
And because their notes were so good, they could commit to the notes like I never did before.
Yeah.
So everybody's doing like 120 everywhere. And you got to get used to that. So the first time when I first got there, And the Valvoline, I was going to say, Valvoline was my sponsor, and they gave me money, and I got tires from Michelin, and I went to the bank, and I said, I got a chance to race in this world championship. And I said, I want to borrow money. They
For a
said,
rally.
well, I can't remember exactly how it worked, but the banker wasn't going to do it. So I said, how did I do that? I wanted to borrow, no, I remember. I wanted to build a garage, a new garage. Mine wasn't big enough. And they said, you don't really have good credit because you own your own business. You're paying yourself out of your money. You don't have a regular salary. We're not going to lend you money for a business. Kind of a sensible business plan, too. I said, well, I really want to go to do this rally in Finland. Oh, we'll lend you money for that. And because I had titles to vehicles, right? So I just laid my titles down, and they gave me a check for like 30 grand or whatever I needed.
Yeah.
And I just, instead of building a garage and doing something sensible, I went and borrowed money and went racing.
Do you think people could get away with that in this day?
I don't know. If I go to the bank and I have enough titles for leverage, they'll lend you money.
Yeah, enough collateral.
If you don't have enough money and you can't afford, they'll just jack the interest up, and right? Does that make sense? So you don't have no money, and we'll charge you more interest. You're good.
Yeah.
So I showed up in Finland, and and the first test road was very narrow, kind of like our roads, almost a 2-tracker.
Yeah.
And Yucky's like, I can't believe how fast you are. I thought the Americans were slow and terrible, but you were really quick. So then the next stage is this really wide road. He goes, what are you doing? It's like, you got to be way over here on the left side of the road in the ditch to make that right-hand turn, because you'll never make it. And then I remember doing some recce, and I'm in the back seat of this recce car, and Sacco Verma and Peter Yatel and Yucky's in there, and they're writing notes. And we're going through this, like a corner between this house and the barn, and then there was a stump or tree or something. And it was so sketchy. And it's like, I hear them saying finish like flat and fifth. I'm like, wait a minute, fellas. I'm sorry to interrupt, but did you say flat and fifth? Oh, yes, we go flat here. I mean, how do you do that? I could not see it. Well, you've kind of like, you get on the guy's lawn here, and then you aim for the building, and then by the time you hit the crest, you'll land between the house and the garage. Oh, you will you? Okay. So I was like, I thought they would tell me, but it's stuck in my head. It's like, these guys, I kind of believe them, but I don't, it doesn't make sense.
So did you end up going flat?
I did. I think I closed my eyes when I did it. Like, this is going to hurt.
Yeah.
And it landed it did it just right. And so that was, I don't remember, it's the second day. But yeah, so I learned so much by lines and commitment and the different turns and whatever. There was just a lot to learn. And the car was pretty good. And then, but one of the things I didn't learn was the decreasing radius turns when they tighten late. How late and when did they tighten? And that was a little challenging. So my notes weren't particularly brilliant.
Did you finish the event?
No, because we had a chance. About the halfway through, I realized my notes weren't right on those type of corners. So it's like either we just change them now, change it to, I realize, add a care, caution, or whatever. There was a couple things I changed to my notes that, that makes more sense. But I couldn't change them all. So it's like, well, let's do the first 2 days. And then if I get through the first 2 days, then we'll just take it easy on the rest. Good plan, right? So after the day 2, on day 3, I'm out on the notes that didn't work, and I'm not going slow. I'm still zippity-doo-dah like Mr. Happy American. I think the first time on day 3, I slammed straight off into a mountain. It was a mud mountain or something like that. And then they got back to service, and they fixed that. And then the next time, one of those decreasing radius, another one, came upon me, and then I rolled it into upside down into a telephone pole. But the spectators got me back on the road. They're very, very efficient. There was about 30 of them that just like ants picked me up, put me on the road.
This is very similar to McRae's story in '92,
exactly.
where he kept barrel rolling and
same thing.
Kept putting back on the road by spectators and somehow ended up making it.
Yeah. Well, I got to the service, but there had 2 services. One was a big one on the other side of the mountain, and then this service was just a small service. They didn't have all the parts I needed. So the mechanic is basically, you're done. And I'm like, I'm not done. I'm not going to stop. I'll never stop. I will just not. I just couldn't. I don't know how to quit sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm getting better now that I'm older, but it was very difficult. So the skid plate's dragging and everything is falling apart. The doors don't shut or anything else. But I'm like, all right, take off the skid plate. I'll keep going. He's like, I'm not doing it. He wouldn't work on the car. Mm-hmm. So somehow I got the skid plate off, and then
you went anyway.
I just chugged out of the way. It was all broken parts and flat tire. I don't remember what was wrong with it. But so I made it quite a ways, but I didn't make it all the way. And so eventually I stopped in a farmyard, and that farmer was very pleasant, and he had a nice daughter that was charming, and I had plenty to eat and drink, and then I got hammered, and when the crew showed up, I was totally hammered. I don't know. They were giving me that really sweet juice that tasted really good. So, but I had learned more in that one race, doing the World Championship rather than I came back here, and I think I won every race I entered after that. It was just so much faster, and even without notes, I just learned.
It's a great school.
It really, and I when I went back to the sponsors like Valvoline, I've come back with an empty money bag, and they said this. I said, I'm really sorry. I screwed up or whatever. He goes, we're so impressed that you made it to the third day. We didn't think you'd make it past the first day. It's like, here are the sponsors fully expecting me not to get very far, but they got more mileage out of having this American over there because all the papers had my pictures. I think Saints won it, but I probably got almost as much.
He did. That was his first Finland victory.
Yeah. Almost as much ink as he did, because it was just interesting. I remember when I first got there, I walked into some convenience store and some guy picked me right out. Oh, you're the American. Like, how do you know me? Everybody knew who I was. They'd read about it and everything. This guy, my buddy that helped me, Robert, he probably pumped it up pretty good. Yeah. But it was a big event for me. I would say that was the biggest enlightenment. And I realized by hanging around with all those guys how much more effort they put into it. Yeah. How far off I was from actually being world champion, what it was going to take. And it was just a massive, monumental task. That's all I wanted to do.
So I think for those young people that are listening, do you recommend for them to go to Europe and do kind of what you did? Would you recommend that? Do you think that's a good school?
Not right away. No, I think they need to do well here first. Like, you're doing well here first. Now go over there. Now do there and get your ass beat. Now come back here, regroup, and then keep going back and forth. Yeah. But I think it's such a big learning curve. You will be overwhelmed if you...
I was overwhelmed.
Yeah, it is. There's so much to learn. But you can learn in little bits and pieces. Yeah. But how are you going to afford to do that? Men say,
go to the bank.
Yeah, go to the bank. Don't borrow money into racing. No. Yeah. I would say, every couple of years go. I'm preparing to bring these cars to Finland this next year. You gotta regroup. You gotta gather it up. You gotta do all your practicing and testing. You gotta finish well here. If you can't consistently finish well here, you're gonna be crushed bad when you go there. Yeah. And I'm talking about winning over here and then go over there and run like 40th, and be happy with 40th, and try to get to 35th. Yeah. And then when you're at 35th and you realize everybody around you is as well or more prepared than you, and how you're going to get to 30th, and you realize they're getting younger and they have more support, and the closer you get to achieving your goal, you realize how far away you are.
It's a never-ending cycle.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I say it's a hobby, and enjoy it and try to do well, and it's a challenge, and don't really be expecting somebody to write checks. There's a lot of people want to think that you can be a rally driver and get paid for it. If you start off with a couple $1 million and you spend it all and you get really good, they might get somebody to help pay for your expenses. Right. But there's nobody going to pay you because you're a charming, handsome rally driver. Right. I tried.
Right. I want to move on. So that was 1990. I'm assuming maybe you did a rally here or there. And then 1992, you have... this
Mitsubishi. My car I have now.
Mitsubishi Galant VR4.
Yeah, so turbo. In 91, I had an opportunity, or late 90, when Volkswagen said, do whatever you got to do, because we're not going to stick around long. Mitsubishi actually wanted me to drive the Galant, or drive a car. They didn't tell me which one, the Eclipse or the Galant. So I I said, thankfully, no. I love Volkswagen. They've been good to me. I can't just switch, even though they told me. And I called the Volkswagen guy, Mike Kaptuck, and said, Mike, what's going on? We don't have much. We're not sure. He's like, what, Mitsubishi call you? I'm like, well, yes, actually. He goes, take it. I can't take it. So anyway, I spent a lot of money on the Rally Golf before. So that was 91.
But this is a big the Galant is a very big difference from a Golf, isn't it? It's a much bigger chassis.
Well, it is. I thought of it as like, we called it the tuna boat. It actually, now that I think about it, it's really not that much bigger, but it was heavier.
Yeah.
And it had a proper all-wheel drive system.
Yeah.
And it had a turbo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. I drove it at Tennessee, and I haven't driven it for even 30 years. It's so quiet and peaceful. I mean, compared to the AMX, that's like stealing a military helicopter. It's just brutal.
Yeah.
But this thing is it's like riding, your video game. It's so peaceful and comfortable, and it kind of floats down the road, and you go over the stumps and rocks and the trees and the ditches. It doesn't seem to matter. I hit probably a 10-inch rock on the wheel, and I didn't even hear it go bump. It was just, I got good Proflex on it. But so I was so happy with that. I think I won overall once or twice. I won the U.S. GT Championship, I think. I don't remember if I won the Drivers' Championship, but and I can't remember. It says number 2 there, so I don't know if that meant I was second overall, or I don't remember anything about the overall points. But I did pretty well, and I won overall. I think Washington or Oregon.
Okay.
And
was this another deal where they gave you parts and everything? It was all your own.
This was a little different, where there wasn't much money. There was the car, which I had to choose whether I wanted the Eclipse or the Galant. And I chose the Galant because I felt it was a better car than the Eclipse. I felt my driving position was better. I felt I didn't like the raked windshield of the modern cars the Eclipse has.
The Eclipse is a very small car, and in that time, that was what factory Mitsubishi team was using in the World Rally.
Well, exactly. That was really, but it was 300 pounds heavier, and it didn't have a limited slip. It had 4-wheel steering.
Right. That's right.
So that had to be dealt with.
Yeah.
But the guy that was a very nice guy at Mitsubishi. I got a car and a small check, and the partnerships. So I got HKS, Sparco, Michelin, GAB.
How did you get? Did they approach you? Did you approach them?
The partnerships?
The partnerships, yeah.
Well, it's generally a phone call from the motorsport manager saying, "Hey, here's our new guy. Help him do whatever you can."
Okay, so there's always a connection that somebody had to make.
Used to be. I don't know if that's the case. I don't. My deal with Ford recently, they didn't push their partners like that. They said, "Yeah, well, this is who we like to use," but there wasn't a thing. See, because with Volkswagen and I don't know about Mitsubishi, but Volkswagen, they bought millions of Recaro seats and millions of Bosch spark plugs and air filters. So when the Volkswagen Motorsport guy says, "Help our guy out," they're like, "Sure."
They'll do it.
So it wasn't like American lobbying quite so much and political pressure, but they could see that it would be in both benefits to help their racing program.
Yeah.
With Mitsubishi, I think that the suppliers could see the direct connection where they could sell more parts. I mean, this was kind of early stages for the bolt-on stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
before this, they didn't have bolt-on stuff.
That was early day HKS.
Yeah, I still have that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was overly complicated, yes. The car was overly complicated, but...
You still have one. Is the car that's outside, is this...
The same one.
That's the same car?
Yeah.
Same
it took
chassis?
me another 30 years to get that one.
That's incredible.
And that one had, when I sold it, Vermont Sports Car, I think it was them that converted it to an automatic, and a guy out west, a quadriplegic, drove it for a while. And then I found it, Dave Clark found it and called me up and said, "Hey, I found your old car," so I bought it. And then my good best friend Pete Rizzo, paraplegic, he drove it as a handicap car. And then we ruined the transmission, so I just converted it back over to a manual, so now it's back to a manual. So that was 92, and at that point, I had pretty much worn myself out, a 7-year thing. You do something flat out for 7 years, and then you crash.
What they call the 7-year...
It's not the itch so much. But I think everyone's different. But if you can burn it, you burn out.
Yeah.
So I decided
from the time and the effort and everything that you put into it financially. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And if you don't have, you know, a wife and kids and a mortgage and other interests, a boat or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I decided I had enough, and I sold everything in my garage, my cars. I kept my rally golf for a while, but eventually I had to sell that. And I went to Europe, and because I wanted to be world champion.
Still.
Yeah.
Even after the whole Finland.
Oh yeah, more than ever.
You were hungry.
I could see the marks were it was going to be way harder than I thought. That was even more interesting for me. So I had put together a lot of information. I still have of American in Europe. It was a sponsorship proposal on how an American could get enough interest in Europe to get enough sponsorship to go after the world championship.
Yeah.
And you know, it was a lot of effort, but I spent most of '93. Libraries, and you know, before the internet was available, you had to go to Boston and New York to the biggest libraries and look up all the major corporations and find out where their distribution channels are and where they're going next, and read Ad Age magazines. And I just got totally involved in how to be able to how the sports marketing works and how to get a sponsor a good value. And it's not just people give you money because you're fast. It's like, what can you do for them? And so you start talking their language, and all of a sudden they start listening.
Yeah.
It's
Any
like,
luck?
Actually, I did. And the interesting thing is that, and I went overseas with all this information, and I lived and worked over there and worked as a driving instructor and escort Cosworths. I worked with Ford, and I got to test drive all these escort Cosworths. I had my own personal car for a while, and it was a dream job. It was really good, paid good. And then I finally got close to the real money, and the guy I was talking to, he's like, well, that's a good plan. It's like, but you say only 2 years. No, we're not going to do anything for 2 years. It's 5 years. And I got to ask you, why do you want to do this? It's like, you're single. You don't have a house, a mortgage. You've been doing this. You know, this 5 years, you're going to be living in a hotel for another 5 years. It's like, can you mentally handle that? Are you stable enough? Because most of the champions I see, they had wife and kids. Yeah. They went home. They didn't like work all night and party all night and do their thing and just keep working, and it's not sustainable.
They had something to go back to.
You need normalcy in your life, and I read books on it, and it's like most of the best drivers in the world had normalcy. Yeah. And the guys that were fifth in the world championship but never quite made it, they were single, burning the candle at both ends, working 2 jobs, trying to do, you know, and it's not sustainable. So when he asked me that, he says, you go away and think about it. And I really wanted to, at that time, I was doing this driving instruction. And I really thought, I like doing this. People would say, wow, I've been coming to these, they have like test drives, like they're going to come out with a new model vehicle. So they set up a big event, and all these people, thousands of people come, and they test drive, and they decide what they're going to do. So people, like, there's almost professionals that just go to all these test drives and have fun. And they would I go to all these, and I like the way you teach, you know. So I got this sense that I could actually teach, even though I'd been doing it for Vermont Sports Car. I'd been doing it for the rally thing in Pennsylvania, that little rally school thing we used to have. I forgot what it's called.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
But I'd done it enough, and so, but I never really I taught thousands of people, and I kind of got a sense I liked doing it. And then I kind of thinking, wait a minute, this world champion thing is kind of stupid. It's a lot of effort, and it's not really that. And what am I going to have at the end? A bunch more trophies.
Yeah.
I want to go home and build a rally school. And that was it. I gave up on my world championship dream.
So in my notes here, I have a long gap, and I think that actually works well with the rally school. The next photo that I have...
Is it a destroyed vehicle?
Is this.
Oh, Hyundai. Well, that was just a filler job. That one was me.
Was that the press car?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that one might have been, the co-driver was from Spain or Mexico or something.
And this is going back. This is obviously clearly I was a spectator back then.
I have not seen that picture.
But that was, I believe there was like a race car publication. They had some publicist drive the car, and he wrote an article about it. And was this possibly the same car?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a number of them. Most of the time, the co-driver, I would drive, somebody would co-drive. Perry King, the other picture I showed you upstairs, had Perry King, the actor, he drove. And it was a yard sale. And a couple other times, they had yard sales.
So they would put these like prominent people. You were obviously in the rally industry.
And
They would put
I'd
an
teach
actor.
them.
They would put a
best I could with the amount of time I had.
And so you taught all these people.
Yep.
And they would have one rally in the Hyundai.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah, and I think it was a good program. I did it with we did it with Toyota, I think, too, a while before that. I'm not sure if there might have been another company we did it with, but it was a really good program. Yeah, you put somebody in there who wants to write a story. I did it in '89 with the last event of the championship in my golf, in the production golf. Chris Jensen, who's a guy that actually lives nearby. He was a famous journalist for the Chicago Plain Dealer, and he wrote a really good story about trying to navigate for me. And it's funny because he's like, I'm talking, but this guy ain't slowing down. He's talking about hairpins, and I'm still shifting up a gear. It's funny.
This is before the day of social media influencers and everything, but I guess that was
They wrote for either car magazines, or these guys wrote for newspapers. I've had a lot of newspaper journalists do it.
yeah.
I think I was doing really well. There was a number of people that thought that I was in the open car, but I would go by and it sounded like a weed whacker compared to theirs.
Oh, that's right, because they had the open class with.
They painted the same,
And it was the
and
same
I was
color.
going like as fast through the corners. But when I'd leave the corner, it sounded like I was my laundry was overdue.
I want to take a little bit of a gap, but the next two photos that I have here.
Well, that is a gap.
We have, for those that can't see, we have the Subaru WRX.
Air Force Reserve days.
And the Air Force Reserve, the famous four-wheel drive.
Yes, well, there was a number of other events like this Hyundai time, where I did various things and built the school.
But I'm assuming at that, I'm calling it a gap, but you're focused on.
This was actually kind of close.
Yeah. Yeah.
This might have been 00 or 01 or something
01,
like
I
that.
think.
Yeah. So.
So how did the Air Force sponsorship
That's a good story,
come
isn't
about? Yeah.
it? So in 02, I was teaching classes, and one of the students was an Air Force major who was racing Escape in the desert. So he had like a front-wheel drive SUV in the Baja class. They allowed SUVs, and so he was trying to get to grips with that, and he was having a hard time, and so he came to the rally school. And so I started training him, and I don't know, within a few days, he said, maybe you should drive. Like, what do you mean? Because I don't think I'm good enough to do it. It's like, yeah, I'm a good pilot, but no, it's different. So he was with Air Force recruiting, and he asked them, and what do you think? And it's like, Tim's an Air Force guy, and it made sense that.
So that was the connection.
I was an airplane mechanic, yes, back in the 70s. And so.
I'm sure that helped your case. So.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. The long story, it was very challenging for people to understand that the Air Force doesn't actually have a job that you race rally cars on. That was difficult for some to understand. So the operators on the 800 number were very busy trying to explain, no, we don't have one. Anyway, so it happened to be that I said, well, maybe, because it was 02. My second child was being born. It's like, okay, well, all right, here's what I'll do. I'll build it. I'll get a car, a Subaru, because you could just get the GC, whatever they call it,
GD.
the bug eyes, yeah. And I'll put a cage in it, and I'll race it. I'll show up at the first race, and for $10,000 an event.
Production GT.
Yeah, and I'll do the first event, and if you like it, then we can do the second event. And I didn't promise them anything more than that. Just, I'll guarantee you'll love it. You show up. If you don't like it, you don't like me, whatever, you're done.
Did you pay? I mean, because this is the bug eye was brand new back then.
Just go to the dealer and buy one.
You went to the dealer.
Yeah,
you
I
bought
didn't made
one.
the first payment. I already turned it into a rally car. That's how I did it.
Okay.
That's how you do it.
Okay.
Just go buy a brand new car and
Sure,
rip it
yeah.
apart. So, but I'd spent all the money on the cage and the seats and the harnesses and whatever. So, built a rally car, had somebody help me do it because I didn't have time for it. And then I showed up at the first rally, and they brought their recruiters, and they had a really good time because they realized that everybody in rallying was like-minded, sort of adventure type of
Same.
technical-minded, exactly the kinds of people the Air Force is looking to fix airplanes.
Same persona.
Exactly. So they were all in. I mean, I don't think we even got halfway through the first rally, and they seemed like big trucks. They're like, hey, can we have one of those? And can we have one of those? And it's like, yeah. So we just built the program up a little bit at a time. But at no time was there any big checks written. At no time was there a situation where they didn't like it. They were embarrassed. They could have walked away. They could have totally disregarded what I was doing. And then I remember...
How did the transition happen from a production GT Subaru to a fully open Ford?
Well, that's a good story, too. Good questions, man.
Yeah.
So I did pretty well in the championship. And throughout the year...
The PGT in 01.
Yes.
Yeah.
01 or... No, 02.
02, yeah.
So throughout the year, the Subaru, I impressed a number of the people. I'd go to Air Force bases and whatnot. And then... What was it? It was... they wanted me to show up at an Air Force base and give a general a ride. Because they said, after a while, they were so happy that what's it going to take to win overall? I'm like, well, that's a different story. That's not
$1 million question.
That's not a $10,000 or $20,000 here and there thing. Yeah. That's you need at least $1 million to get started.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Well, this general's the one that has to make the decision. So I showed up at the base and it's like, oh, give the general a ride. You're going to let him drive? I'm like, I don't think the general should be driving my car. The general's like...
You showed up in the Subaru?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come back from Pikes Peak. So I think the general or somebody said, well, didn't the general pay for that car? I'm like, well, yeah, sort of. Okay, yeah, you're right. This general went off the road. But he was good. It didn't hurt it too much. But he was fun. And so, but the real deal was, during that time, they had a football game, and they had airplanes flying over, and it was all a big deal. And I was talking to people in the crowd, and I'm standing up there in the heat. I'm probably there 3 hours or whatever, just talking to me, answering questions, telling them about rallying and all this other stuff. And in the crowd was the finance guy was sitting there watching me, talking to this one guy who was something was wrong with him, but he was droning on for a long time. And I was very patiently listening, talking to this guy, treated everybody the same. He was so impressed with how I was to people and how I handled myself with other people. He told me much later on, he goes, I'm the one that had to sign the check and make the final decision. And by observing you with normal people that I would not have had the patience that you did, he goes, that's when I decided you were the right guy.
Interesting.
And all along the way, it was about character. That's what they wanted to make sure, that they had the right guy. And all the recruiters throughout that year were all very happy with the people that they met and the events, what they were doing. And so it was a good thing. So that car came from England. It was made by a guy named Dennis Osborne at Dome Engineering.
Because it's very interesting, because obviously here in the U.S. and even overseas, the focuses were front-wheel drive. This was turbocharged four-wheel drive.
This is an Escort Cosworth Group A, like a safari car. Basically, I mean, the body shell is an SVT you can buy here, but it's got the engine is in straight instead of transverse. So it was a like Ken Block Escort Cosworth.
Yeah.
But yes, that one that was a good time. I don't feel that I gave my best performance. Alex was my co-driver.
Gelsomino.
Yeah, I felt pressured to give up Martin for that year, and Alex.
Why?
The team wanted Alex. They had a better sense that Alex was more eager and more willing and maybe more whatever.
Okay. And this was AV Sport?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, in this situation, it was a little, actually, it was even before I found I was sick and had cancer and I was dying. I didn't even know it. But it was the time where I didn't have the right team feeling around me. It was kind of herky-jerky, kind of like, yeah, you like Americans or you hate them. Or, I didn't get my best performance out of me.
Because the team was not American.
No. There were some.
Yeah.
And, I try to, I'm a mechanic, so I'm going to bond with a mechanic. Well, that's not allowed. Don't talk to him. What? Don't talk to him. Guy's tightening my wheel. I want to get to know him a little better. Buy him beer, whatever he needs, Couldn't take the boys out and have fun on the town, So yeah, so that was and that was the year we had a problem with the notes, and so Alex and I went to Jukki Hunkinen, my co-driver from the rally golf days, over in Finland for a week, and he got us on the same page. It was good. Alex learned a lot. I learned a lot.
Do you remember how you finished that season? Because that's back when we had Subaru.
We had all the proper teams. Mitsubishi, Subaru, Higgins was running.
Yeah.
Higgins was my teammate.
Because he was part
Or
of
no,
the,
Higgins was a teammate before that. Higgins was a teammate here, and then he was driving the Mitsubishi there, I think. Yes. For Vermont Sports Car.
Yeah. Do you remember how you finished? I don't have it here in mind.
No, I had a few crashes. I did pretty well on some. Some of my stage times were good. I can't remember if it was fourth overall or.
Do you know what happened to that car?
I actually don't, but if I find it, I'll probably buy it.
Okay.
I believe it's somewhere in either England, Ireland, or Scotland.
Or it's balled up,
Or it
unfortunately.
looks like a raisin.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they would have fixed it because the body shell is quite common. So
Yeah.
no matter what they did to it, and it's getting harder to get those parts.
Yeah. And so after that year, the Air Force sponsorship dried up?
Yeah, they went to road racing instead. They decided that the market was bigger, and there was decisions beyond me. So, and I said enough. I was gonna stop anyway. And by that time, I was so busy with work in the rally school, I just didn't have time.
Too many commitments.
And I also didn't feel so good. And then I had planned on doing the Dakar rally. I had found sponsors for that. And then I told my dear wife I would like to go do the Dakar rally, and she wanted to know if it was safe. And I, of course, said, of course it's safe. It's very safe. I said, as a matter of fact, the only ones that get hurt are the younger drivers. But the older drivers, they don't get hurt because they're old. So she got onto Google and figured out that, no, they don't even let young drivers in there. And there's a dozen old guys that die every year. And so I said, well, I'll get more in life insurance. Would that be better? Well, of course, she's a sweet lady, my wife was, but she said yes, of course. So then I went to get more life insurance, and they said, no, go to your doctor immediately. That's when I found out I had cancer. So going to Dakar, and it saved my life, actually. So I was out of commission for a number of years with a few different issues, and now I'm missing a few more parts. So it was probably the next thing was Mazda Speed. What do you got? Under that, I'm just trying to guess what's he got next. Oh, yeah.
So just for context, this is a very high-spec Subaru CPD2. I believe this was 2007. And correct me if I'm wrong, were you going for the X Games?
No, I didn't care about the X Games.
That wasn't the goal?
No. Other people were. That's what they wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't see the point. It wasn't a rally. But the CPD car was interesting. It's a pro drive car, like a world championship car at the time, really, N14 or whatever they called it. Yeah. The car, the driver's seat was set back. Everything was set back further. It was like a little bit of a spaceship. And that was maybe the year I was racing against Ken and Travis. And I think I got beat by a couple seconds overall in LSPR. I like LSPR. I've had good success there. I used to have bad success there, but bad success?
Bad success.
Yeah, I'm not
bad
sure.
times. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It was successful. I had fun, but the result was not there.
So how was it hopping in that car? Was this a multi-event deal, or is this a one event?
I can't remember how many times I drove it. That was the funnest time with Martin. And
why? Why was it so fun?
Well, I got my game on. It was Martin and me, and the car was right. And I think the first stage of hose blew off, so I'm a half a minute down. My typical strategy is lose a half a minute right away and then spend the next 2 days trying to make up for it.
Yeah.
Keeps me focused.
Yeah.
I'd rather not do that, but it seems like it happens often. So I got into the rhythm, and the car. You learn that the car setting that back. Now a lot of you guys have your car seat set way back, pedal set back, but you're less sideways, and you're just more like driving it, really way faster through the corners.
Yeah.
And our notes were right, and the car was right, and the mechanic, I love Whiskers, my Welsh rally mechanic, and so I really did enjoy that. And then I remember it was the last stage. I do my little last stage thing sometimes. So I think Travis and Ken were sitting back thinking it was all over, and I just took a half a minute off them on the last stage. So that was fun. And the owner of the car, Doug Haver, he was a good friend of mine, and he sent me a video of the stage, and we were definitely ripping it, and it was flat out. I can't remember the stage name.
So do you think it was fun because the old boys were back, like you and Martin, and everything just felt at home?
Yes. Yeah. And I do remember using that car again with my famous Welsh navigator, Davies, Howard Davies. He's fun, large, fun, laughing, joking, and so good. He would read notes like, okay, you're good. Flat here, flat here. Oh, take it easy here, boy. It was like you almost didn't know. He was reading notes, but it was more like he was giving me a little nursery rhyme or something.
Yeah, theatrical performance.
I just felt like going flat out here, but here I didn't feel comfortable, so I slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
So a number of times, I don't remember how many times I drove it. And then I also drove the other car, which you're probably going to whip out here at one of these points, the GC8 one.
How'd you know?
Actually, running out of ideas. You don't have a picture of that.
I don't actually. I did, but I figured it wasn't significant.
Yeah. I had also the next year or whatever, right around this time, I drove that too. And that was fun.
So you drove both CPD cars?
Yeah.
You're one of the few that did that.
Yeah.
I want to take a bit of a gap and bring back this. So this is a Ford Focus RS, recent times now.
How do you find all these photos anyway?
I did my research.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
What was the deal with that? I see even when we pulled up to the shop, there was a Ford Focus RS. I was like, ooh.
You have to look a little further. You might find more.
Maybe. What was the deal with the RS?
That's a long story. Well, actually, I really liked the idea of the torque vectoring. I got a chance to drive one, and I just thought that was pretty cool. And so we were at the time we're racing Fiestas, and I asked Ford if they wanted to see that happen, and they were kind of lukewarm about it because it's only coming out for a couple years. They're only going to make so many of them, and torque vectoring, they already probably knew the car thing was going away. It's hard to say what they knew, but they weren't warm enough to like give me a car or money or anything like that. So I went out and bought one. And like, okay.
Again, you went to the dealer, you bought it off
brand
the
new
showroom.
one. Started ripping and pulling wires and plugs and stuff. But it's all CAN bus. It's extremely complicated.
Different days now, yeah.
And the suspension on a Focus, it's mostly, the body shell is mostly a regular Focus, like sell millions of them. Mm-hmm. And they've only made a few upgrades to the body shell, and the rest was bolt-on parts. So I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. So it was a challenge. I needed a challenge, I guess. And so I started putting Bilsteins on it and raising it up and disconnecting things. And
is that what interests you? That it's the challenge of it?
Right. That's why I've developed the AMX. Now the thing's it's probably going to stop breaking down soon, and I'll park it over here. Now that's ready. Now I'll take the next biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when it's ready, that's what I like to develop vehicles. I mean, it's very frustrating when your car breaks all the time, but if you're into the development portion, it's part of it. What did I learn? I get so excited about what's next. What did I learn? So the RS was always going to be a too heavy car. Mm-hmm. Same thing. But I went and stripped it down and figured out what wouldn't work, and then I bought another one. And so I had the one ripped apart in the garage while I was testing all my pieces and components on the other one. And then eventually the cage was done, and I had the suspension. I got the I remember also M Sport was using them, and still do, I believe, for recce cars.
Yes.
So I had a one up on them. So M Sport finally called me for advice, and I told them how much I could get another 2 inches of travel out of it, and what to watch out for, and how did I make the brakes smaller, and how did I do the rear suspension was an issue. The subframes on all those Focuses were crappy. It was very similar to the Focuses that you've seen race. Mm-hmm. With the subframes, they tweak over, and so you got to tube them up. And so I fixed all the parts that I thought were wrong. And then I had the problem with the all-wheel drive off. When you just got real happy, and then the thing goes front-wheel drive.
Interesting.
So
is that why it was a fairly short-lived car?
No, they had not planned on it living. No, it was not that at all. They had head gasket problems. They had other little problems, but they were basically a good car. They had not planned on selling that many. They're already onto something else. They already have a different plan. Now, that torque vectoring system was GKN, and GKN said, no, if you're going to use this system, you need to put a switch on it, and the cooling switch has to tell when the thing's going to overheat and shut it off.
Yeah. That was even typical on the street cars where you're hooning around and thing would overheat on you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I figured a couple ways of getting around it. And then I also had a help from one of the engineers, which happened to be, and we train at Ford engineers. And so the same engineer had to come to the driving school. So I told him to bring his little engineering laptop along with him. And then he looked around and gave me some advice. And then I went and did that. And so I don't know how many people would be all excited to know that there are some fixes, but I don't know if I would probably help them.
Yeah.
I mean, I built that one car, and the guy now that owns it road races it in Arizona. I don't know what he does with it. But I think ACP did well in it one time at New England, and then I did okay in it one time in New England. And Mount Washington.
Yep.
And maybe a few other times I drove it. And then Ford wanted it. They really liked it for like car shows. We went to the Barrett-Jackson. They parked it there. They had we eventually blacked it out and made it, put the gas cans to it and made it look like the
like
ghetto.
A Baja style.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a fun project. I still use mine as the winter car. I still have spare cars that I use for parts. I have 60,000 miles on my winter car, and I beat that thing every mile and I love it. It's so much fun.
Good car.
Yeah.
I have one last photo here. This is not really a rally career photo, but I think this is quite relevant.
This is the one of me in prison?
No.
Oh, yeah.
It's a photo of you and obviously the late Ken Block.
He's very good student, very good customer.
Can you remember the first time
friend.
you met him?
Well, the first time was when he came. I didn't know him. I knew Travis. I've heard of Travis, but he came to get Travis to come to the school, and because he was sponsoring Travis. So
Block was sponsoring Travis.
Yeah, DC Shoes.
Yeah.
And that's really what it was all about. And so then he's like, well, I'd like to drive. You know, he didn't say he wanted to drive in rallies. He just wanted to come rip around.
Yeah.
And then at the time, I can't remember. I was supposed to train both of them, but then at the last minute, they brought Higgins in, and David Higgins trained Travis.
Yeah.
Because Travis said, and he just told me the other day, he regretted it. He said, I didn't want to sit through the classroom. I didn't want to learn. David said, you don't have to.
Just come out with me. Yeah.
So I'll teach you how to go fast. Tim's just going to teach you like things like how to stay on the road and not hit shit, you know. So, so Ken's like, I'll go with you, Tim. So I had, 4 or 5 days with Ken alone. I think that's how it worked. And how it usually works, the Vermont sports car guys, they get involved, right? So they want to get Ken and Travis in a rally car. So they want me to teach them enough so they can drive the car without breaking it or crashing it. Then they'll get excited, and then they'll start writing checks. Vermont Sports Car then says, thank you very much, goodbye. So by the day 4, day 3 or whatever, they roll in with their rally cars. I'm like, oh, no. I barely get Ken to stop hitting things with my old Golfs and old Quattros and old Subarus. He was doing pretty good, but, now another 150 horsepower was going to make it more complicated.
Yep.
I think I smoked cigarettes at the time, so I'm pretty sure, like, when they roll the car out, and then I have to go from teaching you on a cream puff Subaru to a Group N rally car, I'm, like, nervous. It is very sketchy. That moment where you have to go next 3 levels, not next level, next 3 levels. And
how did he do?
He did very well. I mean, after I smoked a half a pack of cigarettes, but he came into it, and he's like, he wasn't sure he could do it. I'm like, you can do this. You've got the skill. I know. I do this all the time, but he wasn't convinced at first. He just said, oh, "This is kind of fun. I can't do this. I mean, I love rallying. I'd love to be able to do that, but I'm not a professional." He just was blown away that I could bring him in 4 days, go from not knowing anything about driving. I mean, he wasn't, he knew something. He'd been driving cars all his life, but I think it was that time at the school that he realized he could do this.
And what was your relationship with him after that? He obviously went
Well,
on
I'm just
to...
a teacher. I'm the coach. He'd come back every year before New England, and then he'd send Lucy and then Leah.
Did you know him on a personal level, Ken?
I mean, just the time we spend in the car, not really, no.
Yeah.
But he was always very nice to me, and he was saying nice things about the school. And we got along pretty well. We probably mostly shared story about raising children, because, all right, this is what I do all the time. I'd rather talk about kids or something.
Yeah. I think that's that's a side of Ken that nobody really saw. Obviously, everyone saw the car.
He was very good with his kids.
Very good with his kids.
Yeah. And that's, you don't see that a lot in a lot of famous people like that.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, whatever, I got kids. Here they are over there. It's about me, isn't it? No. So that's one thing I notice I deal with a lot of famous people, or I used to, and they don't want to talk about their movie that got the #1 hit. They don't want to talk about their #1 song. They want to talk about rally, or they want to talk about their kids, or they come back from doing some real famous gig, and the first thing the wife says, trash, mow the lawn. That's what it was with me. Hey, I'm a famous rally driver, and now I got to do the trash or mow the lawn. My wife would beat me right back into the guy on the street that has to do his own trash. That's what you need. That's that normalcy I was saying.
Yeah. But what I think is so fascinating that he obviously had a great career in rallying, but it all started with you. Do you think about that at all?
Yeah. He was I'd say he's the most famous student we've ever had.
Yeah.
Because his millions of followers. But yeah, I think he was always generous, and he was always kind. And even like when we'd go out to eat, he would be worrying about his kids, and the kids would be running around flipping out, and he'd have to go chase them down or whatever. We kind of acted like just 2 old guys.
Yeah.
Because he's younger than me, but.
Yeah. I want to flip the switch a little bit and talk about ARA. I know you were one of the co-founders of ARA. Why? Because from my perspective, it's a thankless job, and not only is it a thankless job, you put in a lot of hours, and on top of it, there's no money to be made.
Spend a lot of money too.
You spend a lot of money. So right now,
long hours, hard work, and no pay. I'm in.
Right now, we're in. There was Rally America, and then obviously that stopped. And what made you kind of say, "Hey guys, we should start our own thing. Let's start ARA." How did that happen?
Well, that's another long story. You sure you got time for this?
The mic is yours.
A lot of people don't know the whole story. Don't really need to know the whole story. It's been long enough now, so they probably should. The biggest thing, me as an organizer, I was also during this, somewhere between these photos, I was also organizing the New England Forest Rally. And my mentor, Ted Goddard, was the manager, and it was him and Buffum for years. And then Buffum got out, and then I sort of tried to slide in, but you can't slide into Buffum's shoes. He's too good, you know. But as an organizer, I started realizing that, you know, Rally America would roll in at the last minute and make all these demands and didn't really care what the organizer thought. And they would make us sign these contracts saying that, you know, we have to provide all these things. And it was really a one-sided deal. And I wasn't happy with that. You know, I like the peasants. I'm kind of a peasant, and I like helping them. And so I wanted to see how we could do it better. And the club system in Europe, I got exposed to that in Finland and other places. And I thought, well, that's what we really need is a stepping ladder and to have a club system so we could have workers they could be rewarded for their skills. They could be advanced. I remember there are stage captains that were captains for 20 years, and their assistant captain never got to move up. You know, it's not how you do it in business. You can't stay the top guy. You got to keep leading. Even the military training taught me you got to keep moving, train your replacement. You're constantly evolving. That didn't happen, and I thought with the club system would help that. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that, improve organization generally. And we go to these every year. The organizers would go to an event where we would meet with Rally America, and then we would try to do best practice. You know, we would discuss what we were doing and what worked in New England might not have worked in Missouri and Washington, and some of those meetings were very, very helpful for most of us. And I thought that's what we need is a good way for the organizers to coordinate and talk and work together, because we're all kind of like in our own little tube, you know. We're not really working together.
What I found is that even though each rally operates under an umbrella, it's all quite different, and they're all quite siloed in their own ways.
Yeah,
and you noticed that too.
Yeah, as an organizer, I saw it, and my organizational skills aren't. You know, I'm not a super good guy at it, but you know, running the rally school and other businesses, I realize you can't do that. They fail. Businesses fail because of that reason. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got people that they got their little fiefdom and they want to protect it, and there's all these things. So I want to come up with a better system. And then when I talked to, you know, the Rally America guys, they had their own little program. And when Doug Haver took over Rally America, and he spent a lot of money on it, and I think it was good in many ways, because SCCA said we've had enough, so he saved it. Yep. Before him,
and he spent his own money.
Yes, a lot of it. So I thought, well, if we had a better system and we could work well with the organizer, with the national sanctioning body, and they could help coordinate some of this, we could share best practice. And then when I realized that Rally America was not on that same page. So I kind of met with a lot of resistance at first about what things got to be done to change. And that's when I did learn a lot about, it's just a hobby, it's not going anywhere. A lot of the older guys thought that. And I thought, well, yeah, you're probably right. It is just a hobby, and the sport isn't maybe ever going to be as big as NASCAR. And if you tried to make it that big, it would screw it up.
But I think if you have that mentality that it's we're fine where we are, it's never going to grow. There's not even a potential. Right. It's just going to be stagnant the whole time.
And I was very frustrated with that. And the biggest thing is I wanted to get the sponsor. I wanted to see the organizers of the events get some sponsorship dollars, and show the value that this event had. And it wasn't easy to do, because the way Rally America's contracts read, they had a handle on. They had control. When you wanted to get a sponsor, you had to call them first, give them the phone number of the sponsor, tell them who it was, and they'll take care of it. Yeah. And then it's the last you ever heard of.
No, thank you. Yeah. Even for folks with media.
Oh, the media badges. Yeah, oh my goodness. I tried to get my sponsor to go get a media thing, and they wanted $3,000 for a media vest. Yeah. Yeah. So this just went on and on and on. And like I said, I don't do well like that. So I said to my buddy Martin Hedlund, Martin, what can we do about this? What can we do it like the Canadians do it?
Yeah.
What was you going to say?
No, I was going to say, I mean, did you start ARA when you knew Rally America was just about to end, or were you doing this?
Yeah, because I realized, and I was told, that the owner wanted to use it as a write-off for a business.
Yeah.
And as soon as he got what he needed, he was going to dump it. The sport was going down the tube. But I didn't want everybody to know that. So talking to Martin about Canadians, how they do it and how the Europeans do it, and let's try to model this like the rest of the world, even though we can't exactly do that. I wanted to use some of their best practice methods. And so Martin had a better handle on it, I think, than many others. And plus, Martin is kind of like me. He likes the peasants, so he'll save them. So we also needed somebody that was good at, doing all the paperwork and everything. And so my partner, Chris Sear, he was still kind of new at the school. And so he was new enough to, maybe he was a little naive to what it was going to take. And there was some big, scary players here. And they all had power, the ones that...
Scary players as in what?
Well, how is it managed? It's a long story, but there are people that are pulling the strings, that have been pulling the strings for a very long time, that are still pulling the strings.
I know what you mean.
And they're like unelected officials.
I know what you mean.
Right. So they didn't like the idea of talking like this because they had power. They can help influence the rules. They could influence sponsors. They could influence everything and have been. So they didn't want to hear what we had to say. So that was it was very difficult to build this and get people on board. But I had one of the first, when I started working on this, I had the number one sponsor call me up and say, I hear you're doing something and I don't know what it is, but I want in. And then I started getting the organizers saying, I heard you doing something. I don't know what it is, but I want in.
Snowball effect.
All so frustrated with the way it was.
Yep.
They just wanted something different.
Yep.
And because they could tell the end was coming. And so that encouraged me. And so we started having meetings and we started putting it together. And there was a lot of people involved, a lot of organizers from almost all the events. And one of the early, Doug Shepard was one of the guys that we would talk on a regular basis, And at at an organizer meeting with all the organizers in Rally America, we'd come direct. This is wrong, and it's like, that's the way it is. You're going to sign it? And I'm like, Doug, this can't continue on. And so I had Doug Shepard's opinions early on. And Doug is a tough one because he sits around and he tries to see how it's going, and he kind of plays the middle a little bit, more than I would. And that works for him. And so while we were getting closer and closer and we were having meetings, the meetings were kind of painfully slow. It's like,
to get the ball rolling.
Once the ball was rolling, we had the meetings and everything, you got everybody's opinion, and it just takes time. And that's why people don't like being ruled by committees, So we lost a few because of the painful, slow process, But I knew it was empowering the organizers. They felt, wow, we can make these changes and we can do this. And so early on, the ARA didn't require you to pay them for, all the things that we just talked about with organizing rallies. It just the costs. Everybody, New England has massive road fees. Other organizers have, and we also have hotel fees, and there's so many different costs for everybody, different. So we tried finding different ways to resolve each one of these issues, and I think it did work. And the other thing was the competition committee would be the one deciding on rules. Well, that didn't go over very well because some of the guys that have been deciding the rules didn't like it because they had to ask somebody something. And at the time, Subaru was like a week ahead of everybody else, and everybody was getting frustrated because the way they were just making these decisions, they didn't include everybody. So that's kind of how it started. There's a lot more to it, and some I don't remember everything, but When it got most of the organizers that I thought were in, that's when we had to try it. And then Rally America stayed with it. We had a couple more negotiations. It was very difficult. But I just stood my ground. I'm a stubborn Irishman. And I said, no, it ain't going to happen. This is what we're going to do. And eventually we went over, and I think it was the right thing to do because I'm pretty sure the sport wouldn't be running now if we didn't.
I agree. ARA, I mean, you've obviously since moved on. I mean, did you sell it for $1 or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thing was I wanted, same thing, develop it. I wanted to build it, but I didn't necessarily want to see it grow. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
So after a while, we had the meeting, the annual meeting, and it was time for vote for officers. And then I had heard that Kevin Miller, the
From
guy, USAC guy, we'd been talking to him and all along, but I'd heard that he would consider being nominated. And I'm thinking, that's it. That's the guy who does all the paperwork, has the sponsorship dollars, already owns the oldest sanctioning body. I'm like, there it is. That's who I want to own this. Because I was already like 250 in, and that's a lot for a small business.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to what Doug Haber put in. But so I told the committee, I said, listen, I think this guy will do a better job than I would. I started it, but I think he'll do a better job from here on. So if you, it's like, I find somebody to do a better job, I get out and let them do it. So I made sure they didn't feel bad about shipping me down the road. And I also knew that him and Doug were buddies. Doug Shepard.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Doug Shepard and Kevin were buddies, and I wanted Doug on board, even though I knew Doug would do it as differently than I would. But so they voted me out, and Doug and Kevin got to be the president, and then we made a bunch of changes before that. But overall, that was what I think made the big transitional change, and for me, I was kind of worn out. It was very difficult to negotiate with some of these people that just wanted their own way, and that's the only way it was.
Yeah. How do you think they're doing today? You're obviously a competitor now. You have the other lens.
I do like being a competitor. I know that.
It's better than the other side, right?
Well, no. Honestly, I got into being an organizer because it was what I needed to do. For me and my rally hobby, I feel everybody needs to eventually, they have to either start helping as an organizer or eventually do it when they're old. And so I did it because I feel I can give back to the sport. And then I'm really glad I did all that. It was hard on me. I don't have the skills, administrative skills.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad I did it. And what I noticed now is, I think it's better than it was. Maybe they don't have the committees don't work as well as they did. I think it was very difficult for people to be patient and work the system. And I think some of the people that had been pulling the strings, got back to pulling the strings again.
They're still there.
Yeah, because there's only so many people that are going to be smart enough and willing enough to do this work for nothing.
Correct.
So you end up with the same people.
Correct.
Because they're willing to do it. But, I think maybe we made maybe we made 3 steps up and 1 back, but we're still 2 steps ahead.
2 steps forward. I agree. I think from my perspective, I think it's less siloed than it was in the Rally America days.
Yes,
there's a little
organizers
bit less
feel more empowered too.
Yeah, there's no $3,000 media.
Right. Yeah, you see media everywhere.
You see media, and that's kind of what the sport needs.
And it's probably safer. I know because of Rally Safe. There's a lot of things that happen better. And once again, the next generation has got to take it over. So guys like you are going to have to come in, and you have computer skills and whatever skills, and you'll take it to the next level. And I'll just be having fun and telling old stories.
Yeah, I like that. I want to close this show because I know we're obviously almost 2 hours in. Crazy how time flies. I have a few kind of quick fire questions that I want to kind of shoot you over. Number 1, favorite rally that you've done?
Boy, that changes too. The LSPR right now.
Why?
Michigan.
'Cause-
It's
'cause-
tricky. It's muddy. It's unpredictable. It's Michigan. It's
Because it's funny, if you ask my dad, he'll say the same thing, but he calls it still press on regardless.
well, yeah. That's
But that's back when it went out
but
throughout
that used
the
to-
whole UP.
well, the press on regardless used to kick my butt. I mean, I met people that said they've been trying for 5 years and can't finish it, and I thought you're an idiot.
Yeah,
And then it took me 5 years to finish it.
yeah. It's a tough event for sure.
Yeah, so finishing that event is good. I think right now I'd have to say that one. Yeah.
I'm gonna throw out an event out there, Cherokee Trails.
Yeah, that was good. That was first time back with a Subaru in '02. Yeah, I like those roads.
Yeah. You think it'll come back?
I'm
obviously-
sure of it.
You've obviously heard the rumors about
Oh yeah, I hear all kinds of things. I see that the amount of money being dumped into that area and the roads infrastructure's growing, the developers are there, the governor's there, everybody's spending money. I would think it's sort of like here in a way where a lot of people are moving there because it's not expensive, it's peaceful, the world's not getting any safer.
You think America has a place in the WRC?
Well, for a long time, I didn't think so because of knowing as much as I did about how many organizers and how hard it is to find volunteers. But if there's enough money, we could take organizers from all over the country and fly them there.
Yeah.
We could probably have enough workers,
Yeah.
but just didn't think there was enough workers. There's other issues that are different in America. Just using cars, cars that don't belong here on roads. How are they going to do that?
People don't think about that.
Well,
But
that's another reason why
it's an
we
issue. Yeah.
don't talk about it much.
Yeah. Yeah. Favorite rally car?
Wow, that changes. I got I got 2 buildings full of them.
Well, how about from the favorite rally car that you've competed in the past? Not necessarily going.
Well, no, I only consider ones that I competed in
Okay.
because some are just unobtainable.
Yeah, right. What's the one that stands
I
out?
think the Rally Golf, even though it never was successful, it will be.
Why? Because it was unique? Is there a factor of that?
Well, it's probably the time of my life where I really had a hard time getting rallying going and getting myself going. I don't know. The Rally Golf is just a cool car. It was made to rally. It's standard Golf 2 parts, upgraded to all-wheel drive. I don't know.
So it's funny 'cause it's your favorite because of the nostalgia factor and the rarity. It's not necessarily performance.
It never won a world championship rally.
Correct.
It never stayed in there long enough to even attempt. They had a couple runs. I might have had more success than anybody else, but they never committed to it. They didn't build lots of parts, and they didn't, it wasn't a big run. It was just a quick little spit in the pan. So it's the what if. What if I had all the parts, and what if I had the engine under the staircase going, and what if I had all the pieces, and I had enough money and time to do it, which I do finally. So it might be a little 30 years late. So if I'd have had where I'm at now 30 years ago, it would have been a different story.
Oh, well, we'll certainly see in the future.
Yeah,
see what you
there's
whip
no
up.
more Quattros anymore to beat.
Yeah. Last question. Future of rally. You've obviously seen rally from 80s, 90s, 2000s.
We had carburetors.
What do you think about the future? EV?
We still have carburetors.
You think EV has a future in rally?
Yeah, I'm not much on EVs because I don't understand. It's not my thing. I'm old school.
Me neither.
I think the hydrogen rally car is probably the future. That's my prediction. I think Toyota's already got it. I don't think they're telling anybody they got it. But the street cars they've got.
Yeah.
And
they're certainly pushing it.
Their stock engine, you just add a few parts to it. I've always said hydrogen was the answer.
Yeah.
I'm not impressed with how dirty it is, an electric car. My friends that are in the wrecker business tell me what it's like when they arrive at a crash scene when a Tesla's there smoking, the guy can't get out of the car. There's too many things that just scare me. I drove an electric car up Mount Washington and Pikes Peak. I was really happy to not drive it anymore. When I did the lecture and we had the little introduction to the firemen before every race, they all asked me, how do you put it out and what do you do? I would ask that, and the common answer was you need a dump truck full of sand to dump on it. That didn't make me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
The fire bottle, don't pull it. It's not going to help.
It's not going to help. What about like the driving sensation when you drove it?
There was none.
Yeah.
No measurable sensation, air blowing by your ears. People swan diving out of the way because you're coming way too fast. You have no idea how much speed you have coming in.
Yeah.
Once you get used to it, then you just hear gear noise.
I think for rally specifically, it'll be the death of me if I see EVs in rally, because it's such a like visceral experience, and the part of what makes rally so special is the sound,
The noise,
right? And
it's a brutal thing.
And if you remove that aspect of it, it's just not
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, I mean the point. I don't quite see the point. I think the hydrogen is. I understand that for sure. And besides, we don't have to make anything new. We just add this kit on. The problem, I think, is going to be distribution. They're
Of
not
course.
the big oil companies.
Of course.
If they're going to want to sell oil or diesel or whatever, they're not going to start building hydrogen plants unless they own all the hydrogen making plants.
I think there's politics involved with that one.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But Tim, I think just to close out this podcast, I think you've had a great career in rallying.
A hobby. A career would involve getting paid for it.
Well, I mean, you still started the rally school and everything. You've at least.
Well, I did turn my hobby into a business. Yes.
And I think not many people in the sport can say that. So
Me and Lance.
I certainly admire you for that one. But I think and I said this earlier in the show, I think what I really admire is that you're still doing it. You still have projects out here, and I don't think it's really going to stop.
No, I'm hoping I get maybe 5, 10, 20 years maybe. That's what I'm trying for.
Yeah. Tim, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mark.
All right, folks, and there you have it, the great Tim O'Neill. We could have talked for hours and hours more, but I had to cut off the conversation at some point. Let me know what your favorite topic that we talked about was, and maybe I'll mention you on the next show. If you enjoyed this program, make sure you subscribe to the That's Rally podcast. I have many people in the pipeline for future episodes. Hope to see you then. Thanks and goodbye.